Vice President Balakis, the live stream is now in progress. You may turn on your mic and start the meeting.
Good evening. Trustees, the time is now 5:33, and I ask that you, I am reading Colleen's line. Good evening, and welcome to the March 12th regular board meeting for the Capistrano Unified School District. The meeting is now in session, and the time is 5:33. Mrs. Hayes, please call the roll.
Trustee Castellanos.
Here.
Trustee Pritchard.
Present.
Trustee Zollinger.
Here.
Trustee Adnams.
Here.
Trustee Jones.
Here.
Trustee Balakis.
Here.
Trustee Davis is absent and will be joining us during closed session.
Mrs. Hayes, before the board recesses to closed session, is there anyone who'd like to speak to the closed session agenda items?
There are none.
The board will now recess to closed session to address the following agenda items: a student expulsion, 1 case; conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, 1 case; conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, 1 case; conference with labor negotiators, CUEA, CSEA, Teamsters, KUMA, and unrepresented employees; conference with real property negotiators, 4 properties; conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, 6 cases; conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, 3 cases; public employee employment, appointment, 2 considerations; and public employee discipline, dismissal, release, 1 case. Any comments before we recess?
Yes. Board Vice President Balakis, I would like to state for the record that I have a possible potential conflict of interest regarding the district's Las Ramblas property discussion, board report, and proposed board resolution. Specifically, I live in close proximity to the Las Ramblas property. Therefore, in an abundance of caution and to avoid any appearance of impropriety, I will continue to abstain from participating in any motions, discussions, or voting related to this property or any future transactions related to its potential disposition. Additionally, I am recusing myself from any and all closed session discussions related to this property, as well as from the boardroom before this item is discussed in open session for agendized board discussion and possible action. I will return when these items have concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Adnams. Duly noted. The board will now recess to closed session.
President Davis, the live stream is now in progress. You may turn on your mic and open the meeting.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the March 12th regular board meeting of the Capistrano Unified School District. The meeting is now in session. The time is 7:05. And Ms. Hayes, will you please call the roll?
Student Board Member Verando.
Here.
Trustee Castellanos.
Here.
Trustee Pritchard.
Present.
Trustee Zollinger.
Here.
Trustee Adnams.
Here.
Trustee Jones. Trustee Jones has stepped away. Trustee Bullockis has also stepped away. Trustee Davis.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Clark Hampton. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Trustee Adnams, seconded by Trustee Castellanos. All those in favor say aye. Okay, and the motion carries 7-0-0 to adopt the agenda with a preferential vote of aye from Student Board Member Brando. Ms. Hayes, can you please read the report from closed session?
On agenda item 3A, student expulsions, trustees voted 601 to approve staff recommendation on the following case. Case number 2025013. On agenda item 3B, anticipated litigation, trustees gave direction to staff. On agenda item 3C, existing litigation, trustees gave direction to staff. On agenda item 3D, conference with labor negotiators, trustees gave direction to staff. On agenda item 3E, conference with real property negotiators, no reportable action. On agenda items F1 through F6, trustees voted 7-0 to approve staff recommendation on the following cases. Case number 2024079M, case number 2024118, case number 20250103, case number 20250106, case number 20250113, case number 20250114. On agenda item 3G, existing litigation, trustees voted on items G1 through G3, 7-0 to approve staff recommendation on the following cases. OAH case number 2022120269M, case number 2024030117M, and case number 2024100236. On agenda item 3H, trustees voted 7-0 to approve the appointment of Chris Dimbiak to principal Arroyo Vista TK8 School effective July 1, 2025. And also on 3H, trustees voted 7-0 to approve the appointment of Melissa Geiger to principal Vista Del Mar TK8 School effective July 1, 2025. On agenda item I1, trustees voted 7-0 to approve staff recommendation on the following case, resolution number 242508C. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Dr. Chris Brown, who will present his superintendent opening comments, followed by trustees.
Good evening, everybody. I will keep my comments to the board brief. For those of you who know, I've been out sick this week, and so I've only just recently got my voice back. Welcome to the March 12th meeting of the Board of Trustees. So I just want to start with a few events that we have coming up. Friday, we have another Coffee with Chris. Hopefully I'll be more able to speak, but it's at Canyon Vista at 8 a.m. And then March 18th, we have a parent university for elementary math with virtual math lessons for parents to showcase what teaching and learning math looks like in our elementary classrooms. Monday, March 24th, we have a CCA career fair at San Juan Hills with over 80 businesses attending, and that's always a very crowded, very well-attended event. And then another event on March 24th, and I want to add a little context and clarity. So at the board workshop, we talked about facilities based on the DAC recommendations of the 10 sites to study. And one of the things we're going to look at is studying Del Obispo and Kenosha. This is the beginning. This is the exploratory phase. Staff does not have a plan for these schools yet because we need to go talk to the community. So first step was talk to the board. Second step was talking to the community. Nothing will be happening for the 25-26 school year. So any actions that we taken would be 26 and out from there, depending on input from the community on the best plan forward. So to start getting that input from the community, Monday night, March 24th, I will not be at the CCA Career Fair because I will be at Marco Forster Middle School meeting with the Del Obispo Elementary community to answer their questions and explore possible plans for the, the out years moving forward for Del Obispo and Kenosha. And before I sign off, I just would like to congratulate Chris Dembiak on being named the Arroyo Vista TK8 principal. Chris is going to do a great job there, and welcome Melissa Geiger to our district. She's coming from another district, and we are a desirable place to be, and we keep picking some of the best, and so she'll be taking over at Vista Del Mar TK8, and so I wanted to extend my congratulations to her. And that ends my comment, ends my comments for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustees? Trustee Bolkus?
Good evening. I just want to update you on some of the activity that Trustee Jones and I have been participating in. This week is called CSBA, California School Board Association, that we are both delegates representing CUSD on. And it's called Legislative Action Week. So with various different legislators that oversee our school district, we are mixed with, because they generally oversee a few different districts, we are working in tandem with other board members from other school districts in speaking to the legislators. Last week on Friday, I wasn't able to attend, but Dr. Brown and Trustee Jones had a meeting with Lori Davies. Prior to that, we had, I think it was the week before, we had met with Assemblymember Kate Sanchez and her whole team, along with Saddleback Valley School District, because Kate Sanchez oversees both. Had some really good conversation. The whole reason we're doing this is, don't be surprised, but legislators don't really understand education. And we are there to educate them, giving them talking points so that when we ask them to be advocates for what CSBA believes is important for schools, that they've got the talking points to then take to the floor and to oppose or to advocate for. One of the things I'm pretty excited about in speaking to Kate Sanchez is we explained about our charter schools and that we, I can't remember if it was December meeting or January meeting, we brought up, and I had asked some specific questions about one of our online charter schools that is costing us a lot of money because most of the students, they have over 5,000 students that are online, and they are out of our area, but the money doesn't follow them. We are paying for them. And they were very interested in that and want to be a part of a follow-up meeting with the Orange County Board of Education to see what we can do in terms of having some oversight. When there's underperforming schools, we need to be able to talk about that and see that they either elevate and educate, or they could be getting, the students could be getting a better education with CUSD. So I was kind of excited about that. This morning then, because it was a big group effort with CSBA and not just CUSD, we were, Trustee Jones and I were on with Lori Davies again to discuss. And just real quickly, some of the things that we are discussing and bringing forth is special ed reform and the laws, no unfunded mandates, the LCFF, the LCAP, Proposition 98, and the funding. Legislators seem to think that it's the ceiling, and it's not. The funding is the floor, and we should be getting so much more, and we have not over the years, and so we are really pushing for that. And a lot of the conversation is about legislators making decisions and voting without picking up the phone and talking to an educator, talking to a superintendent, calling a trustee, because they don't really know. And so we are trying to build their comfort to invite them and encourage them to give us a call in regards to that, because local control just keeps being taken away with all these various laws and propositions. And we really, each school district knows their community and their students best. So those are some of the things, and we continue because tomorrow morning we meet with Senator Catherine Blakespear again, and what else do we have tomorrow? Is Stephen Choi. You met with the new Stephen Choi, and then we've got Strickland, Senator Strickland, who is being or has been sworn in tomorrow, Thursday, I believe it is. Diane Dixon. Oh, and we're meeting with Diane Dixon. So we're really working to try to express and explain and have them more aware. So I just wanted to share that with you. And lastly, I want to do a shout out in terms of donations. Our PTA is always so supportive in terms of the programs and all the activities. I've cited this before, but once again, Pacific Life Foundation consistently throughout the year is giving to so many of our schools. Just this month, they donated $28,000, $12,000 to Lisa Niguel High School for tech and supplies, $6,000 to Castile and Capo Valley High School, $4,000 to Newhart, $3,000 to Oso Grande, and another $3,000 to San Clemente High School. So we so appreciate those businesses supporting education in our schools. So I just wanted to share that with you for the evening, and I know Trustee Jones has more to share with you legislatively. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Jones?
So before I get into that, I want to acknowledge that at last week's board workshop, the COSD staff, as Dr. Brown said, recommended that the board consider consolidating Del Obispo and Kenosha schools. As Del Obispo parents have already heard, and again, Dr. Brown mentioned, the first family meeting for the Del Obispo families to hear more about what's going on and express their interests will be on Monday, March 24th at 6 p.m. in the Markle Multipurpose Room. Whatever's to happen, it will be subject to a vote by the board at a future meeting sometime probably in the next 12 months. I've talked to a lot of parents about that this week, and I'd like to continue to talk to parents. I encourage you, if you are concerned about this, to email me. I always say my email address is gijones@capousd.org. My phone number's on the district website. If you don't want to phone me, send me an email, give me your phone number, I will call you back. If you gave me your phone number, I probably did call you back. So please, I would like to talk to you about this or anything else. I mean, people are always kind of afraid or surprised when I call them, but that's my job. So on with the legislative issues. I think it is interesting that we think that legislators know about all these things that go on in the state. Well, a lot of them are new. We have term limits, so they often don't last terribly long in Sacramento. But in addition, we have legislators who are teachers. And you might think, well, teachers know. I'm sorry, teachers don't know. They know about teaching. They don't know about school finance. They don't know what laws are being passed in California that affect teaching. And so they just plain old don't know. And it's interesting to me how sometimes shocked they are when we tell them some of the things that are facing us. They ask great questions, and I'm always very pleased at their response. When we met with Assemblymember Davies last week, she asked for additional information about some of the legislation we had discussed, and that included SB 1315. Trustee Bullicus and I brought that up last year. I wouldn't be surprised if you don't remember. This bill was co-sponsored last year by the California School Boards Association, to which we are delegates, and also the Association of California School Business Officials, to which Mr. Hampton and some of his staff are members. The bill addressed the voluminous reporting requirements for school districts that are mandated by the California Department of Education, or the CDE. Recently, the superintendent of the Garden Grove School District brought one of her district's legislators a copy of each annual report that their district has to produce. The reports filled 7 banker's boxes. 7 boxes from a school district smaller than CUSD's. Ours might have filled 8 or 9 boxes. SB 1315, which passed just last year, requires that beginning March 1st, 2025, the CDE must submit a report to the governor, the state superintendent of public instruction, and the legislature that lists every report that school districts are required to submit to them. Among other things, the CDE must give the purpose of each report, recommendations for which reports must be consolidated, and what it costs school districts to prepare each report. I don't know if you heard that date when I said it just now, so I'll say it again. March 1st, 2025. That was 11 days ago. Has the report been produced? It has not. Where is the report? Good question. I wonder what would happen if school districts failed to submit their reports on time. The CDE hasn't even been able to come up with a report that lists all the reports they get. It makes you wonder what they're doing with the thousands of pages of reports that each of California's more than 1,000 school districts, county boards of education, and charter schools are required to produce every year. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Jones. Other trustees?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I first want to just thank Trustee Bullicus and Trustee Jones for the hard work that they are putting in to meet with our legislature. These are important issues for us as a district, budgetary issues, and this is how we make things happen, right? And they're the ones that make the laws, pass the laws, so it's such a good work that you guys are doing. So thank you so much for all the time that you're putting into that. I also wanted to give a shout out. I was honored to attend the honors concert recently at Segerstrom Theater, and was so impressed with these high school kids performing, the orchestra, the choirs. It was incredible, and I was so blown away that our district offers this kind of an experience to our students that excel in music. I'm watching these violinists, and I'm thinking, someone recently told me to make one decent sound with a violin is near impossible, and they're just up there like, it was so beautiful. So I just want to give a shout out to the teachers involved, the music teachers, the guest conductors. I think is it Albert Young that that coordinated the whole thing? Thank you for that. Incredible job to the students. Shout out to the kids. It was really, really good. My last comment, I also had the opportunity to attend the Community Advisory Committee's Sunshine Awards. And next time I go to that, I need to bring my tissue because it was amazing and so moving to hear the parents nominating teachers, paraeducators who have just gone above and beyond with their exceptional children. And then to see the kids performing, it was an honor to be there. It was amazing. And I love that our parents and families of exceptional students have this committee. They have this support. I've sat on both sides of the IEP table as a parent and as a teacher, and it's not an easy journey. So huge shout out to the committee. The Sunshine Awards were amazing, and it was an honor to be a part of it, so thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Castellanos?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you to Trustee Jones and Trustee Bullicus for taking the time, educating our legislators. But I also want to do a shout out, not only in this district, which makes us so phenomenal, that our trustees educate our legislators every day, but our parents do it as well. So we have a huge advocacy team in this district. They just traveled up to Sacramento to work with legislators to learn more about what's going on up there, to educate, to advocate for the kids in this district. So it's a tremendous amount of work that they do. They do it every day, and they're constantly watching to see what's going on. And this district alone, out of Orange County, sent 22 ledge reps up there that week to talk to Sacramento. So a huge shout out for that event. It's called Sacramento Safari. It happens every year. It's an annual trip that happens. Our student board member was also up there with us, and so it was a great opportunity for parents to also advocate for the kids of CUSD. We also heard from Assemblymember Marisucci and Senator Sasha Renee Perez. Also, Senator Choi was there and also gave some remarks. This year, there's over 2,000 bills that are being introduced, and so that's a pretty heavy lift. So at this time, there's not a lot of specifics yet because there's still a lot of transition with bills. So as those kind of come to fruition, I can give more updates at the board meeting next month or the following month to kind of what's coming down the pike and what will directly affect CUSD. Also, I wanted to shout out to Shore Cliffs Middle School. I had an opportunity last night to attend an amazing event. It was called, I want to get it right here, Be Awesome Internet. It was an opportunity for parents and students, their child, to come together in that forum and talk about how to be internet safe. They talk about how to raise smart, strong, alert, kind, and brave kids when going online. So that was a great opportunity for our families to interact with their children. They had activities there. So amazing job from the Shore Cliffs community. So thank you. It was great to be there. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Castellanos. Other trustees? Okay, and yes. I just want to highlight a few things as well. I was also able to attend the Sunshine Awards and the Honors Concert at Sagerstrom, and it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. We were there with Trustee Jones and Trustee Bullicus and Trustee Adams and Trustee Zollinger and staff, and it was such a beautiful, beautiful event. And for our students to be able to play and perform in that kind of a concert theater was absolutely unbelievable. And they were wowed as much as we were to be able to be there. So that was incredible. And the Sunshine Awards, again, it is such a special event, and honored to attend with Trustee Castellanos, Trustee Bullicus, Trustee Adams, and Trustee Jones. The Shore Cliffs Career and College Day is always a hit. That was on Monday or Tuesday, yesterday, I don't know, Monday, I think. Great to see. I love having our community and those come and speak to our students about potential ideas and things and ways that they've made their way through life and choices. The Tesoro Spring Concert was beautiful. I was able to attend that with Trustee Bullicus. And I also want to give a big shout out to the board workshops. This year, if some of you have noticed, we are doing longer extended periods of time on board workshops. And I just want a huge shout out to our staff and superintendent for the direction that we're taking on that, and the opportunity for parents to come and participate. And we're hoping soon that it will be available online as we're making some changes here in the district office. So appreciate the work there and all that was done by staff to make sure that trustees were informed as we're making decisions. I also want to echo Trustee Adams' comments and Trustee Castellanos and the appreciation for the advocacy work for both Trustee Jones and Trustee Bullicus and our superintendent to help educate our legislative members so that they can best know the needs of our district and be able to share that up in Sacramento. And also appreciate Trustee Castellanos for her attending up in Sacramento last week in the advocacy work with our advocacy team. So thank you. There's a lot going on always in our district, and I appreciate everyone that comes together in all of our ways, from our students, obviously, to our teachers, to our staff, to our everyone that makes it come together, because we are the largest district in Orange County, and we're the largest employer in Orange County. So South Orange County, yes, absolutely. Okay, and with that, we'll move to the student board member for your comments. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Earlier this month, I had the opportunity to visit Niguel Hills Middle School and meet with their students from ASB and PAL. It was really insightful to hear all of their ideas, and as I've been visiting these middle schools, it's been incredible to hear their experiences and also be able to tell them a little bit more about the Board of Trustees. And at the beginning of every one of my sessions, I always ask them how many students are familiar with the Board of Trustees, and usually no one raises their hand, or only a couple of students. So it's been really eye-opening for me to be able to talk to them about the board and the work that all of these amazing trustees do, and the staff here at CUSD. Also, I've been able to share a little bit about the college and career program, as many of the incoming freshmen in high school are interested in learning how they can be more involved and what career paths they can pursue while attending a CUSD high school. Additionally, I had the incredible opportunity and privilege to attend the Sacramento Safari Conference alongside Trustee Castellanos and many of the PTSA members in our district. And it was incredible to hear from so many eye-opening speakers, including some elected officials. For me, as a student, I do not know a lot about the behind-the-scenes process and the funding and what goes on at the state level, so that was a valuable experience to learn more about the advocacy efforts that our PTSA does at the state level. It was also incredible to see some of the dedication of all of our parents here in CUSD and their aspirations and dedication to providing support to all of our students and making sure that they receive the quality education that they deserve. March has also been an exciting month across all of our schools. Right now, many of our high schools have been planning the Clash of Classes competition with students showing their school spirit and competing in friendly events. ASB elections have wrapped up at many of our schools, and it's been great to see so many of our students stepping up to lead. Many of our middle schools ASBs have also hosted school dances this month and have done a great job at building school spirit. For our 8th graders and underclassmen, course selection for next year is underway, and registration for after-school CTE classes is now open. These classes provide a valuable opportunity to explore different career paths and gain hands-on experience. Finally, for seniors, the financial aid deadline has been extended to April 2nd. If they'd like any additional help, they can schedule an appointment with their futurology counselor for one-on-one support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're now moving on to oral communications. The total time for oral communications is 20 minutes. Ms. Hayes, do we have any speaker cards?
We do. We have 17 speakers for oral communication, so I'll call your name and I'll ask you to line up over at the side of the room and then come to the podium one at a time. I'm going to call the first 10 speakers, starting with the student, and it will be 1 minute per board policy since we're at that number of speakers. Speaker number 1 is Daphne, our student Daphne. Following Daphne will be Ms. Ortiz, Nancy, Jamie, Lisa Myers, Mary, Kevin Kim, Pam, Jean, and Luca. Daphne, please go ahead.
On March 8th, all Orange County JROTC programs got together for the annual military ball at Fullerton High School. It was a very fun experience, and I can't wait to experience it next year. Along with this, we had our first competition at Fullerton High School in February, where I participated in the color guard and won 3rd place. And in April, we will get the chance to go to a camp called JCLC. JROTC is a very fun program, and I want to thank the former trustee, Amy Hanachek, for bringing this program to San Bay High School.
Our next speaker is Palmyra Ortiz.
Good evening. My name is Palmyra, and I'm here today because my son, a straight A student at Maria Bergeson Elementary, was repeatedly racially harassed at school by a student, called the N-word, black monkey, pushed, threatened with violence, and told he would be beaten up in a fight. And yet, the greatest humiliation he suffered was not at the hands of his bully, but at the hands of his principal, Dr. Linda Kim. On February 21st, my son bravely reported the racial slurs to Dr. Kim. The bully admitted to using the N-word and racially harassing my son, but what happened next was shocking. The very next morning, in front of the entire school, Dr. Kim publicly celebrated this same student at the flag ceremony. She called him up, had the entire school, including my son, applaud him. Not for academic achievement, not for kindness, but because his family made a monetary donation to an organization that has nothing to do with the school. Less than 24 hours.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nancy Rohr.
Where's the transparency? For the first time in 45 years, the new board decided to hold workshops during weekdays. Many interested people cannot attend, even including one board member who teaches classes at a college. Another had to get a sub to cover her public school classes. Even for those who attended, like me 2 weeks ago, much of the discussion was not able to be heard because the microphones were off for much of the time. But the worst of all was when the board members and district staff broke into small groups and not a single word or comment was audible. Nobody's transcribing these discussions, and there's no live streaming. The community deserves to know what is being said by whom regarding ethnic studies courses and school closures. The new board members campaigned on bringing kids back to CUSD schools again, and just what are they doing to accomplish this? I don't think school closures are going to do this at all. If anything, closing a local school and making a neighborhood population travel across town is going to have the opposite effect of bringing kids back to CUSD. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jamie H. Please come forward.
Good evening. I'm here as a concerned CUSD parent and community member, one who cares deeply about the future of our students, especially the most vulnerable. With the looming Department of Education cuts, I'm here to ask each of you, what plans do you have in place to ensure that our most vulnerable students are not forgotten? We're talking about students who already face significant barriers and potential discrimination, students with disabilities, low-income families, students of color, and families who rely on school-based support systems like free lunch. I would also like to address a specific concern to those of you who have openly campaigned for and been sponsored or endorsed by extremist far-right ideologies with policies that have historically undermined public education and marginalized communities. I want to ask, how will you advocate for the students who will be disproportionately affected with these cuts? Our children deserve more than partisan politics and empty promises. Equitable and accessible education is a constitutional right for all kids. This is a critical moment. How will you protect and support our most vulnerable students during this challenging time?
Our next speaker is Lisa Myers. Lisa, please go ahead.
Hi, good evening. As a parent of 2 dual immersion students, I want to speak in support of the incredibly hardworking teachers who teach our students who are learning 2 languages. There is so much more to the students and the families in the program than last month's data presentation showed us. My children went into kindergarten not speaking Spanish, and other families' children went into the program not speaking English. The early elementary teachers run highly productive classrooms full of children speaking 2 languages and teach them all of the academic content that other students in the district learn in 1 language. I wish I could list these dedicated teachers. This experience has made my daughter's and my family's life richer due to learning more about the Mexican, Latin American, and Spanish cultures. It has widened our worldview. Now they're in an equally strong program at San Juan Hills where they're taking world history in Spanish, AP Spanish courses. I hope that the trustees learn about what amazing teachers and programs that Capo has,
Thank
and
you.
they become champions.
Our next speaker is Mary. Mary, please come forward.
Conveniently have 2 very big Trojan horses. The first is called inclusion. Because of AB 1955, it allows secrecy from parents and sexual grooming in classrooms, also putting children in compromising situations at sleepover camps like Pally. The second is named Critical Lens. This horse focuses on oppression and power in just Western civilization and not worldwide, and pits against another. Instead of celebrating us as being united Americans, it divides us by racial groups. Some claim that power will no longer be focused, but it's still in the PowerPoint and the paperwork. When we ask the school district to stand up for the children by cleaning up the pornography in the libraries, we're told they have no power because it comes from Sacramento. Patriots need to stand up for children until Sacramento, you will not comply. Please have another vote on parental notification for 2025. Please inform the parents if your hands are tied regarding the camp situation. Get them to help you fight the insanity from Sacramento. They will do this if you are forthright. And
Our next speaker
and against
is Kevin Kim. Our next speaker is Kevin Kim.
Sorry, just a little nervous right now, but hi, I'm the proud father of a young son who has recently been diagnosed with autism. Today was his very first day of school, and as you can imagine, he experiences significant anxiety in new environments. It takes time for him to feel comfortable and adjust to social settings. I recently learned from fellow parents that Hidden Hills Elementary School plans to relocate students in the SAC program to different schools at the end of the year. This news was deeply concerning to me as stability and routine are crucial for children like my son. The thought of him having to start over in yet another unfamiliar environment is overwhelming. I am stepping out of my comfort zone today to respectfully ask you to reconsider this decision. These children thrive in consistency, and I urge you to take into account the emotional and developmental impact this transition may have on them. I sincerely hope you will reconsider keeping their well-being at the forefront of this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Our next speaker is Pam.
What advantages will our state-mandated ethnic studies provide? If it's presented positively, it holds merit to unite our students together. Will it be a vehicle to inspire achievement of ethnic and religious groups and not focus on racial struggles? Will it highlight progress that's been made in people of diverse cultures and heritages learning and living together, not focus on racial oppression? Will the ethnic studies complement our state's history and social studies curriculum framework? Or will it critically view traditional history, encouraging political activism? We support writing our ethnic studies focused on positive merits, inspired achievements, and progress already made living in unity. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jean. Jean, please come forward.
Good evening, Board. And to follow, what is the objective of ethnic studies? Well, per the model curriculum preface, ethnic studies model curriculum helps build the capacity for every young Californian to develop a social consciousness and knowledge that will contribute to the public good as a result of and strengthen democracy. So my question is, will the curriculum develop social consciousness by teaching that they are a member of a perceived racial group that either have a privilege or a disadvantage based on their group? Or do you inspire students to achieve if we teach that the deck is stacked against them? The problem I have with ethnic studies is it's bent towards group identity, collective thought, collective crimes. Isn't this kind of racism at its core? What about personal accountability? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Luca. While Luca's coming forward, I would like to call the next set of speakers. Bert, please line up. Emily, Sati, Cassandra, Ashlyn, and Heather. Go ahead, Luca.
Thank you. Tonight, I want to start by saying thank you to Dr. Gomez and Dr. Merwin for truly listening to parents, advocates, and community leaders while working on the LCAP. While listening and taking our points, it was a real impact to have the ability of working in groups and learning what our schools have and don't have, and created more and more discussion. This was probably the most amazing LCAP presentation I have ever seen in CUSD. Thank you. I also would like to say thank you to Trustee Castellano for traveling with us to Sacramento Safari. I truly appreciate all her work over the years with the advocacy team on educating our legislators in Sacramento and at home. And I'm looking forward to working with you more, as does the advocacy team. Also, I sent you trustees an email yesterday regarding the rising tide of the online danger for our youth. I want to acknowledge Board President Davis. Thank you so much for your reply. I truly appreciate it. For the rest of the board, if you have any questions, please reach out to advocacy.
Our next speaker is Bert. Bert, please come forward.
Good evening. A couple of months ago when I was here, I heard the board talk about an upcoming ethnicity studies. They didn't know what the curriculum was going to be like, but they talked about how the state was going to mandate that something had to be taught, but that the choice would be up to you. And that it was envisioned as being almost like a travel log, great food and new cultures and architecture. Sounded exciting. As I'm looking at the curriculum that is suggested by the state, it doesn't sound that way at all. I was also pleased to hear tonight the recognition of the tension that you suffer with Sacramento in them not recognizing our local needs, but as you as a board, you're closer to those needs and solutions. I hope that as this ethnicity classes are taught, you won't bow to all of what Sacramento is telling you, and that you'll look to the needs of our community. Instead of teaching victimhood, you'll teach appreciation
Thank you.
of
Our
culture.
next speaker is Emily Cravens.
Thank you.
I'm short, sorry. Good evening, Dr. Brown, Board President Davis, and trustees. My name is Emily Cravens, and I am the advocacy co-chair for the CUC PTSA. On February 24th and 25th, myself, along with 21 other advocates, went to our state capitol for the 4th District's annual SAC Safari. Among these 22 advocates was Trustee Castellanos, student board member Catherine Veranda, and a San Clemente High School student. For 2 days, we learned about the state budget, challenges related to Prop 98, specifics of Prop 28, how school boards function, history of California advocacy, and legislative bills. We were given an opportunity to meet with lawmakers and discuss with them the issues facing Capistrano. As always, the importance of adequate funding was emphasized. For me, the important takeaway was no matter if you are a parent, student, or district official, what we do now means more than ever. CUC PTSA advocacy team will continue to be a voice for all children. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kahi. If I pronounce your name incorrectly, I apologize. Settle. Kahi. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here representing 9 other families to ask the Board of Trustees' support to reconsider the decision of closing down all SAC program at Hidden Hills Elementary. We learned the news last week that CUSD is planning to close all the SAC classroom in Hidden Hills Elementary, moving all 30 autism and special needs toddler to other schools. We also learned that's driven by a district-wide review 5-7 years ago. The rationale is to keep the same kids continue at the same location. We want to point it out that there are other factors we should consider. We strongly ask the board support to explore an alternative approach, which is adding a K-5 SAC classroom at Hidden Hills or a homeschool. The rationale of continue the kids at the same location is for the best of their interest. However,
thank you, Katie. Our next speaker is Cassandra.
Hello. I'm another parent at the at Hidden Hills. My son's in the SAC program as well. He's a preschooler. He's 3 years old. So this came as a shock to me and the rest of the parents. We were actually notified during a teams meeting that all of our kids would be sent to different schools next year, even though our kids are so happy at the school that they're at. They've made tremendous improvements. My son only said about 15 words before going to school. Now he can talk in full sentences. He loves his school and he wants to stay there. According to Clint Collins, the Assistant Superintendent of Special Education, moving our children to different schools next year was a decision that was made by following a special education strategic plan that was already being implemented before taking on his role 3 years ago. Charlie, Settle's mother, Katie, and his grandmother, Linda, and I met with the principal of Hidden Hills, Sandra Godbout, to discuss what could be done to keep our children at Hidden Hills next year. She said that
Thank you, Cassandra. Our next speaker is Ashlyn.
Many parents are outraged by the planned increase in class sizes from 24 to over 32 in early elementary grades. Families are fleeing CUSD schools. Those who can afford it go to private. Those who can't are trying to get into charter schools with limited class sizes like CRLA. My daughter is number 23 on the wait list at CRLA. Is CAPO willing to consider increasing funding to charter schools like CRLA to support what parents obviously want for their children's education? Where are our tax dollars actually going? Please email me a detailed response. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Heather.
Hi, I'm here representing Palisades Elementary School. I sit on the Palisades Foundation Board as the VP of Fundraising. We have gone from $7,000 a year to up to over $50,000 a year very quickly to provide free after-school programming for our children in theater, arts, and STEM. At this point, we're wondering what is going on with the school closures, and we know that Palisades is on the list of the top 10, so we would appreciate some expedient information regarding school closures, and Palisades Foundation needs to know what we're going to do with all the money that we have in our bank and if we should stop our fundraising activities. Appreciate this. Thank you.
That concludes our speakers this evening.
Thank you. For those of you that weren't able to share all of your notes, if you guys, or you're more than welcome to email us. And with that, we'll move on. And Trustee Adams?
Yes, President Davis, just a reminder that I'm recusing myself from items 12A and 13A, and so I'll head out.
And we're moving on to 12A, public hearing on resolution number 2425-24. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing regarding resolution 2425-24 of the Board of Trustees of the Capistrano Unified School District accepting surplus property advisory committee report, declaring property surplus, authorizing the pursuit of a potential sale or long-term ground lease and development of property, finding property to be exempt surplus land pursuant to Government Code 54221, and authorizing the request for waiver of the surplus property competitive bidding procedure set forth in Education Code 1466 at all. The time is now 7:52 p.m. Ms. Hayes, do we have any speaker cards for the public hearing?
There are none.
Okay, the public hearing is now closed and the time is still 7:52 p.m. Okay, and we're moving on to discussion, action, informational items. And once again, Trustee Adams has been recused. 13A, Resolution 2425-24. May I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2425-24 of the Board of Trustees of the Capistrano Unified School District, accepting surplus property advisory committee report, declaring property surplus, authorizing the pursuit of a potential sale or long-term ground lease and development of property, finding property to be exempt surplus land pursuant to Government Code 54221, and authorizing the request for waiver of the surplus property competitive bidding procedures set forth in Education Code 14766.
Second.
By Trustee Zollinger, seconded by Trustee Jones. I would like to recognize Clark Hampton, Deputy Superintendent, Business and Support Services, who will present the item.
So, thank you, President Davis. So, as mentioned in the report out,
This has to do with the Los Ramblas property, and I'd like to introduce Andreas Chaltas, District Legal Counsel, to present this item and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Clark. Good evening. President Davis, members of the board, Dr. Brown, Cabinet, here to a very long titled resolution. I won't go through that name again, their title again. You're effectively doing 5 different actions with one resolution, and I want to speak to a little bit of the background and what's being asked of you, and then we can touch back on the title and why those 5 actions are necessary. This relates to what we call the Los Ramblas property. This is 7.292 acres that the district owns in San Juan Capistrano, northeast corner of Camino Las Ramblas and Avenida California. This goes back a ways. In March of 2016, the district entered into a mitigation agreement with Pacific Point Development Partners, who were doing resident building homes next to this particular site. In that mitigation agreement, it allowed the district to buy this 7.292 acres for $6 million. You had put in some deposit money over time. At a few different instances, tried to sell the option when the board had figured it probably wouldn't be needing this site. You looked to sell the option to purchase, and we were in escrow a couple of times. None of those transactions came to fruition. And frankly, the district didn't own it yet. You were just selling the right, the option to purchase. You have a little bit more headwind when you own something. You now own it. In November of 2022, rather than walking away from your deposits, you very astutely acquired the property for that $6 million. It is worth definitely a multiple of that amount, so it's a good investment by all means. And then the question becomes, what's next? For a school district to dispose of property through sale or lease, you have to follow a surplus property process. Okay? There's a lot to that, but the first step is an advisory committee. That is a 7 to 11 member advisory committee. It's really a cross section of the community. It's made up of parents and administrators and teachers, people who have knowledge about zoning and environmental issues, landowners, business community members, et cetera. So you formed that committee. You authorized it being convened. Bless you. And it did its good, fine work and produced a really nice report that was provided as information only to you last year. No action was taken, it was just provided. And I pause to explain that an advisory committee report is necessary in that you cannot lease or sell property without having an advisory committee convene and take its action and receiving a report from them. However, it's advisory, that's an advisory committee. You're not held to any particular action or recommendation, but certainly nice to have the guidance and the work of that cross-section of the community. So in the report, it discusses a number of things. Number one, it recommends that the board declare the property surplus. That means you don't need it for educational purposes. 2, assuming you're declaring it surplus and looking to dispose of it, it recommends selling that property as a first priority. Next, if you're not looking to sell, it would then say to do a ground lease and development. It's dirt right now, so you would lease this to some developer who would build something on it and give you ground lease payments over time. By law, you can do that up to 99 years, and many school districts, including yourself, have those arrangements where you're getting long-term rental income. So it takes that action as well. Not action, but recommendation, excuse me. It also then noted if there's going to be development of the property that the district should see to it, or at least do whatever it can to the extent possible to be sure that you've mitigated any effect on the neighboring community, ingress, egress, traffic, views, and the like. We noted to the advisory committee in detail that of course gets done by a developer. A developer seeking zoning changes, for example, and entitlements through the city has to go through a whole list of issues and reports and a California environmental quality document, and ultimately get approvals for whatever it is he or she is looking to build, whatever that entity is looking to build. So those mitigation issues will be addressed in a document or multiple documents by any developer in normal course of action. Finally, the report then also said that it would be fine with the committee that you seek a waiver from the State Board of Education. We have advisory committees say yay or nay to that, because in order to seek a waiver, the waiver office from the State Board of Education wants to know that the advisory committee was all for it or not. And so we are able to say to the State Board of Ed, should you wish to seek a waiver, that the committee was just fine with going that route. The reason that even comes up is because a waiver provides you with some flexibility. If you don't seek a waiver from the State Board of Education, you have to follow what we call the traditional bid process when selling or leasing property. This is where you send out a purchase agreement if it's a sale, or a ground lease agreement if it's a lease, and conduct a bid auction, a hearing where you literally have bids based on those documents you put out on the street, come in, much like construction bids, you open them, you declare them out loud, and the opposite of construction, where you go with the lowest responsible bidder, here you have to take the high bid. On a property deal, sometimes you could figure out who the high bid is. On a ground lease, it's very hard because you're comparing a whole lot of different terms. So what would be the high when every other term in that document differs from one another? So it's unwieldy and you can't negotiate. You can't say during the auction, I like your offer, but if you came up a few million more, we'd like it a lot more. You can't do that. You just take the high or reject them all, okay? So sometimes it doesn't end successfully. The State Board of Ed waiver, on the other hand, allows you to seek a waiver of that traditional bid process, so you don't have to conduct a hearing. You can waive almost everything in the Ed Code with respect to surplus property by seeking a waiver, and it's done regularly. We've done it dozens of times. So that provides you that flexibility, and the committee report says green light if should you want to do it. So that's what you have by way of the report in front of the board. That is we're bringing it back to you for acceptance with this resolution. I'll speak more to the resolution in just a moment. One other thing to note is the Surplus Lands Act. Different from everything we just talked about, the Surplus Lands Act stands for it's legislation that says, hey, if you're a public agency, including school districts, you have to put the Department of Housing and Community Development and any identified housing sponsors by that agency on notice that you have property so that they can say whether or not they're interested in having any particular type, including affordable housing on the site. You, as a school district, can exempt this land from the Surplus Lands Act notice requirements by any formal action like this resolution in front of you tonight. The reason we do that is because you're allowed to, by law, if you're selling or leasing after following an advisory committee process, and you've done that. So you still send a notice to the state agency, Department of Housing, and explain to them that you've exempted yourself, so you don't have to stop for 90 days and negotiate with any particular type of housing development entity. You rather get to go through a State Board of Ed process, get a waiver, send out requests for proposals instead of doing a bid auction, and receiving those proposals, negotiating with anybody who submitted a proposal, and seeing where you actually land, and then you get to choose the most beneficial deal, which may not be the highest money. It could be any number of things that you identify for the factual basis as to why it's most beneficial. And we announce that in open, and everybody knows why you've chosen the particular most beneficial deal. So I understand that's a mouthful. That gets us all the way back to the title. The title of this is having you do 5 different things. The first being accepting the Surplus Property Committee report. So you do that formally by way of this resolution. Should you approve the resolution, that report will be accepted. You declare the property surplus. That's a finding that you don't need it for educational purposes, or won't at the time of the transfer. And it's raw dirt, so you don't need it for educational purposes in that sense. If you had an upswing in enrollment and whatnot, the committee would have looked at that and in its recommendation said potentially hold on to it. But the opposite is true. They said go ahead and proceed with surplus property should you wish to do so. It then authorizes the pursuit of either a sale or a ground lease and development of the property. So you can do either still. And again, that's just the recommendation. If you want to just do sale or ground lease, you can. But what we've offered up here is both, because you can have that flexibility and certainly decide later. You don't have to decide that now. It exempts the property. It calls the property exempt surplus land with respect to the Surplus Lands Act. So by taking this resolution and approving it, we send notice to the state explaining, the housing department, explaining that this is not on that list, but they get that formal notice. And then lastly, it gives us the green light, staff and administration, to seek the State Board of Ed waiver. To get that waiver, again, allows you to not have to follow the traditional bid process. To do a waiver, you have to have a hearing, which we just conducted, and rarely are they attended or much said about them. We talk with your collective bargaining units and see whether or not they're all for or not doing something at this site. And then we submit an online application, check a bunch of boxes, provide a rationale as to why we're doing what we're doing, and a declaration from here would be Clark Hampton, again, explaining what we're doing, and literally show the code that we're striking so we know exactly what's being waived from the education code. And it allows us to then move forward with the request for proposal instead of an auction. So that's all 5 things that are being done in this resolution. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. Okay.
Ms. Hayes, do we have any speaker cards on this item? There are none. Okay. Discussion, trustees? Comments, questions? Okay, thank you for a great presentation and appreciate your information. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Ms. Hayes, can you please call the roll?
Student Board Member Verando.
Aye.
Trustee Castellanos.
Aye.
Trustee Pritchard.
Aye.
Trustee Zollinger.
Aye.
Trustee Adnams. She recused herself. Forgive me. Trustee Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Bullockis.
Aye.
Trustee Davis.
Aye. The motion carries 6-0-1 with a preferential vote of aye from Student Board Member Brando. Okay, and we'll bring Trustee Adams back in. And we're moving on to 13B, the Language Immersion Program Evaluation Report. The next item is Language Immersion Program Evaluation Report, and it's an information item only. No board action is necessary, and I'd like to recognize Greg Merwin, Associate Superintendent, Student and Support Services, who will present the item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Davis and trustees. Staff presents item 13B, Language Immersion Program Evaluation Report. Tonight, we will be sharing background information regarding our Golden Bell Award-winning Language Immersion Program Pathways. As well as a high-level executive summary of the findings from a recent audit of our program by the Center for Applied Linguistics. Dr. Rowena Mack returns this evening, and she will lead the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Mack.
Dr. Merwin. Good evening, Dr. Brown and esteemed trustees. Before we proceed with our presentation, I'd like to acknowledge and thank some of our language immersion principals who are here with us this evening. So we have Principal Kristen Nelson from RH Dana, Principal Jesus Becerra from Viejo Elementary, and Dr. Maria Cristina Barrosa from Las Palmas Elementary. They are not only present here with us this evening, but they are very present instructional leaders as well in our program. And very much the success of our program is highly owed and credited to their instructional leadership at their sites. So the vision of a CUSD graduate perfectly aligns with the goals of our language immersion program. Engaged citizen and skilled communicator in particular, these elements are highly aligned to the goals of the CUSD language immersion program that are centered around these 3 pillars. Our commitment to bilingualism and biliteracy. What I mean by that is that we're not only committed to making sure that our students speak the target language, but that they are also biliterate in that in all components, including reading, writing, listening, speaking, are language domains that they are proficient in as well. With that, as they're developing that, we're also committed to their academic achievement in that our standards and our outcomes for our language immersion students are the same as that of the students who are not in our language immersion programs and may not be learning 2 languages simultaneously. And of course, a natural byproduct of this as well is social cultural competence and the ways in which they are engaged in learning about the cultures, traditions, and the people that speak the language that they are learning. This diagram demonstrates that since 1992, our language immersion program has been expanding to ensure that there's equitable access to our language immersion programs for students and families throughout our district. The board actually established a policy that establishes the matriculation pathway for our students, in that once they are admitted into our program, they are then guaranteed these pathways here with opportunities, of course, for school of choice once they transition from elementary to middle school and then middle school to high school. Please allow me to just give a little bit of a distinction on the language that we use. What CUSD has is a language immersion program. That terminology is used interchangeably with dual language immersion program. Within the language immersion program pathway, we offer two models. We have a two-way immersion program. What that strives to do is an equal enrollment of students that are dominant in English and that are dominant in Spanish, or the target language. That is the program that we have in all of our Spanish programs. We also have a one-way immersion program. What that means, that is the program that we have at Bergeson Elementary, where you have the majority of the students that are dominant only in the English, and all the students there are learning the language together at the same time. This may be akin to learning a foreign language in a secondary level, for instance, probably much of the experience that many of us have when we acquire a language. So on the right, we have that 4,500 students in CUSD in total are in our language immersion program, with the vast majority of that in our TWIST program, or two-way immersion Spanish program, and about 500 and so in our Mandarin immersion program across our 3 different school sites. Not to be confused with the numbers here, because the numbers here represent the language allocation, or what is the percentage of English and Spanish that will be used as the language of instruction across the different grade levels. So we have an 80-20 model at Bergeson, Las Palmas, San Juan Elementary, and Viejo. And as you can see, that they may begin with 80% of the instruction in Spanish or in Mandarin, the target language, with, by the time that they're in 3rd grade, that is now split to 50-50. RH Dana has a 50-50 model from the very beginning, from TKK. But you'll see here that they both even out by the time that they're in 3rd grade, that in both models, it's a 50-50% allocation. Regardless of the model of 80-20 or 50-50, we have the same outcomes and success indicators for students that are enrolled in these programs. So before I get into the findings of the program evaluation, allow me to explain the origin of the program evaluation. So in 2022-2023, the Language Immersion PLC that consists of site leaders, teachers, staff, indicated that we really need to prioritize the things that we are doing in our program, and that increased coherence and clarity about the program structure would be a good starting point for that. And that's why we determined that the good way to do that is to go ahead and to establish or to put together an annual a program evaluation. So we contracted with Cal Solutions, or Center for Applied Linguistics. They are the governing body for dual language immersion programs, and in fact publish the guiding principles of dual language immersion program. And along with this language immersion PLC, we collaboratively developed the questions that we wanted to include in this research, in this audit. So I'm gonna pause at this moment to see if there are any questions I can answer about the quick overview that I provided at the beginning, and also the impetus for the program evaluation. Okay, thank you. So as Dr. Merwin mentioned, tonight's presentation serves as an executive summary, a very high-level overview of the findings of the program, with many opportunities for us to use different parts of the findings to have extended conversations and discussions about how we can continue to strengthen our program. So what are the conclusions of the findings of this program? That language immersion program works, that there's a demonstrated effectiveness in promoting bilingualism, biliteracy, and social cultural competence, that as we are developing our students' target language or in Spanish or Mandarin, we are not shortchanging them in our expectations for our literacy. In fact, there are findings in particular that highlight that the outcomes for English learners that are enrolled in our program here outperform the English learners that are not in our language immersion program, and that our program structure is highly aligned with the guiding principles for dual language education framework. So there's a strong alignment about what the research and the guidelines are telling us to do, about the things you need to put in place, and the things that are actually going on in our program. A benefit, of course, of any audit or any program evaluation is that it gives us a path forward and a language to use in terms of how can we continue to strengthen our program. And those are opportunities and areas that we look forward to exploring and expanding with you, the board, as well as our language immersion sites, teachers, staff, parents, and students. These are the 7 different guiding principles. It may seem small here that there are 7, but each of these elements or principle actually provides a plethora of information and opportunities that we can really treat in isolation or expand in depth on its own. And that's precisely the work that we look forward to in doing. For example, as I work with our families that are supporters and proponents of our language immersion program, I have pulled out that family and community engagement piece, looked at the research questions that we looked there, took a look at the data that was included there, and looked at that information to really have a more thorough discussion with our parents and families about what the audit told us about our program, and then complementing that, of course, with their input and their feedback. The program evaluation comprised of these 3 different data points. It's very much a mixed method in that we had both qualitative and quantitative data included in that. So we have student data, of course, many of the data points that we are familiar with, assessment results, enrollment information, what have you. But the researchers also had opportunities to conduct classroom observations. So during the year that they were completing the audit, the researchers actually visited all of our school sites and conducted classroom evaluations to really give us that good snapshot of how this information and how the principles of language immersion is manifesting into the things that we are seeing in the classroom. So their findings from those classroom observations comprise this audit as well. And we were very excited to also include parent, staff, and student listening sessions. So the researchers, with the support of the site principals, put together groups of parents, staff, and students in their own individual groups and gave them an opportunity to give us their voice and their input and feedback about their experiences with the program. So all these 3 data points combined, collectively put together, are what make up our program evaluation. So from this, we have some prioritized next steps, and staff recommended short-term actions, midterm actions, and long-term actions, just to give us a sense of sustainability and continuity in the work together. So I'm gonna highlight some of the action steps for each of the 3 different action steps or time period. For instance, for the short-term actions, one of the things that we look forward to doing is just analyzing some of our current practices. So taking a look to see what is the enrollment ratio and analysis telling us about the effectiveness of a program, and if the model that we have is the model that we need to continue to have is what we need to continue having based on our student demographic, for instance. In our midterm action, we look forward to implementing longitudinal tracking of student outcomes and making sure that as we measure success of our students, that we're looking at it very comprehensively, again, much in the same way that we presented the EL annual program evaluation in a very multifaceted way that includes both the things that we see in the classroom, what the teachers are telling us, as well as assessment results. And last, with the long-term actions, the importance of just the sustainability of pipeline of bilingual educators, making sure that it's a collaboration with our HRS colleagues, and making sure that we have effective teachers and high-quality teachers that are equipped with the skills, the knowledge, and the strategies to ensure that they are very much affording our students with those opportunities that we set and our goals that we have with our language immersion program. And so with that, I'd like to say thank you, gracias, and shishi.
Thank you, Rita. That was wonderful. Mrs. Hayes, do we have any speaker cards? Thank you. Okay, trustees. Trustee Castellanos?
Thank you. I don't think, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think since I've been on the board, we've had a presentation about our language immersion programs, have we? Not like this.
Not like this, no,
No.
but we've had them, yeah.
But not to this detail. So I appreciate it, because there was a lot of really good information in it that I think the public needs to know, and it was very informative, so thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Focus. Did you?
I just want to say that you give an excellent presentation. I always enjoy someone who knows the program so well that you can just talk to it and you're not reading. And it's refreshing. I can tell just how much you're into this program and looking at it, evaluating it, and always wanting to make it better for our students. So I thank you and the entire team.
Thank you. I'll make sure to thank my mirror too at home that you acknowledge the efforts of the extensive rehearsal needed. Thank you. Yeah. All right.
Trustee Jones?
So yes, thank you for this, and Trustee Castellanos is quite correct that we haven't had presentations of this depth before, and I appreciate that. So I've been paying attention to two-way immersion in this district for many years, and have many young friends and parent friends who have been experienced it. There have been situations in some of our language immersion schools over the years, maybe now, maybe 10 years ago, various times, where at a particular school, or at least in particular grades, there were considerably in excess of 50% of one model or another. I believe I was told one time of a grade at one of our schools that was 70% English models, and let's see, what's the opposite of that? 30% Spanish models, and I think I'm aware of that, the opposite of that. And I do not have data, but I have lots of parent stories about what happened to their child in a situation where there was far in excess of 50-50. That not enough time is available for the Spanish models to learn English really well or very quickly, or that there was so much English remediation time needed that the high achievers in either language were being shortchanged because there was so much time given to English remediation. So I am concerned about that. 10, 15 years ago, most of our Spanish models were born outside of the US or maybe came here as infants. Now I think most of our Spanish models, not all of them of course, were born here. They speak better Spanish than English, but they probably speak a lot of English. So it changes a little bit, but I think it's still not entirely different. let's see. I'm concerned that we may need to start introducing 50-50 in the kindergarten and in TK in some of our schools where we're getting an imbalance. Because maybe we are getting equal outcomes for all. But if the equal outcome doesn't come until 8th grade, that's not an equal outcome. The equal outcome ought to be there closer to more like 3rd grade. So this is a big concern of mine. As I say, I live in San Juan Capistrano, where there have been two-way immersion programs for a long time. I've known these people here in the front row forever and ever. And I believe in the program, but I believe in making sure we're doing it right so it really does benefit students. No class should be 70% one and 30% another. And that doesn't mean like, okay, now our kindergarten is 70-30, so we're gonna make that 50-50. That doesn't mean the whole school has to become 50-50, but we have to be thinking about whether that class at that school should be. I just wanna make sure that our students are getting good opportunities to become proficient in, well, they have to be definitely proficient in English because they have to live in this society. But I don't want to sacrifice the Spanish proficiency for students who want it. I just want to make sure that everyone has those opportunities. Thanks.
Thank you. I think the gift that an evaluation like this affords us is that it gives us a point of departure, right? And it gives us an opportunity to recommit to the program and to have conversations as to our responsiveness to the needs of our students at the time and how that aligns with our model. So we do look forward to having those conversations with our sites.
For clarity, you showed a chart in terms of the 80-20 down to 70-30, but whether it's the 50-50 program at RH Dana or both will have it by 3rd grade that it's a 50-50.
Correct.
So you had reported, if I heard right, that whether it was the 80-20 or the 50-50, they both were...
Starting from the 3rd grade, it's 50-50.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, what I was going to say is that both were successful.
Correct, correct.
I don't know, maybe we might have one school stronger than another, but your findings that you're expressing to us does not show that we need to switch to 50-50. I mean, I'm hearing from Trustee Jones that maybe she's questioning we're not being as successful. I don't know if you can address that any deeper.
Just to be clear, I think we have to be careful. We're talking about two different things sometimes. So one is the model of language use, but what Trustee Jones, I believe what you're talking about, because we've talked before about this, is the percentage of students who have their home language in the target or English language who are in the class. And the value of two-way immersion programs, if they get below a certain point where they don't have enough native, for our case, we have two-way immersion Spanish programs, if they don't have enough native Spanish speakers, then the model needs to change. And so as our demographics shift, that's different than sort of the 70-30 language use. It's the percentage of English only versus English learners in the classes. And so one of the things that our schools will always have to monitor is, as our demographics shift, at what point would we need to shift models into from a two-way immersion to a language immersion program like the MIP program, which isn't a two-way immersion program based on native speakers. So that'll be something that the schools have to evaluate as they move forward, but that's slightly different than the model you choose to use in terms of the percentage.
The language allocation.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Well, I'd like to thank you for that and thank our principals for attending tonight. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
And I wish all of my kids were able to have gone through it. And me as well, actually. I might go sit in. Thank you.
Thank you.
There being no further discussion, we'll move on to the next item. And we're on to 13C, instructional materials recommended for adoption by the Instructional Materials Review Committee. May I have a motion to approve instructional materials recommended for adoption by the Instructional Materials Review Committee?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Adams.
Second.
Second by Trustee Castellanos. I'd like to recognize Dr. Merwin, Associate Superintendent and Support Services, who will present the item.
Thank you very much. Testing. Thank you, President Davis and trustees. Staff presents item 13C, instructional materials recommended for adoption by the Instructional Materials Review Committee. I'd like to point out that this evening our staff recommendation includes a commitment by our district staff to support the novel through professional development for teachers, as well as information for both parents and students regarding potentially controversial topics. I'd also like to point out this evening that we have teachers from several high schools, our AP teachers who submitted this novel for your consideration. They are here this evening in support of the item. So I would like to welcome Dave Weinstein, Mandy Anderson, Zach Mendelson, and Kelsey Torres. They are all in the audience. If you give us a wave and say hi. And you're welcome to sit in the front, and then we'll go ahead and they can ask you if they have questions. So if you want to sit in the front first. So I would like to point out Dr. Johnson and I are available for questions, as well as our amazing teachers, and staff recommends approval.
Okay. Ms. Hayes, do we have any speaker cards on this item?
We do, so I'm going to ask speakers to line up per board policy with the number of speakers being at 12. We will hear 1 minute from each person. I'll ask you to line up in the following order: Grace Pratt, Sandra Gilman, Elizabeth Fisher, Barbara Helton, Patricia Holloway, Jamie H., Amy Baxter, Barbara, Catherine Hall, Courtney Diffner, Lisa, and Sarah. Grace Pratt. Please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Grace, and I'm a senior at San Clemente High School. I'm here to ask the board to adopt James by Percival Everett into the curriculum. I stand before you tonight not only as a book lover and a supporter of the freedom to read, but as an IB diploma candidate. One of the pillars of the IB program is perspective. In my classes, I'm encouraged to learn from different perspectives and challenged to consider lived experiences that are unlike my own. I've seen firsthand how diverse literature sparks meaningful discussions and thoughtful insights from my peers, who approach these books with open-mindedness and empathy. Reading James is a wonderful opportunity to continue fostering compassion and understanding in our Capital USD students, complementing messages and the adventures of Huckleberry Finn and the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, which are both already in the curriculum. I've been so fortunate to receive such an amazing, all-encompassing education in my 13 years in this district, and I want to ensure that future students are granted the same opportunities to grow and stretch their thinking. By adopting James into the curriculum, the board will not only enrich students' understanding of diverse perspectives, but also empower them to engage with literature that challenges, inspires, and fosters empathy. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sandra Gilman.
Good evening. I'm a concerned citizen, and I feel that for all the wrong reasons, school districts are banning books from our students' curriculum. I just finished reading James by Percival Everett. More than anything, it's an adventure story. It's also about a man with a rich inner life. James is smart, well-spoken, and really thinks about his situation. But as a slave, he has to hide the fact that he can read and write, and even more importantly, that he can think for himself. Throughout the book, James and Huck Finn find themselves in some pretty dangerous situations, and I really liked how they use their intelligence to get out of trouble. James is definitely about race, identity, and freedom. When did those things become un-American? The word nigger comes up in the book just like it does in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. It's uncomfortable, but Everett uses it to show the language of that time and the way Jim was treated like all enslaved people. It's part of his bigger message about race and identity, making us rethink how we view these issues today. I read this book because it was on Barack Obama's favorite books reading list. If he, as an African American and former president of the United States, thank you.
Elizabeth Fisher. Elizabeth?
Thank you. Esteemed board members and Dr. Brown, I'd like to thank you very much for approving this novel. I am a retired credentialed library media specialist from a very large high school here in Orange County. I understand all of the controversy involved with book banning, and I appreciate that you follow the accepted procedure for approving novels. It involves both staff, teachers, administration, board members, parents, community members, and everyone has access to those books. What frustrates me is the people who come forward in favor of banning books, and oftentimes, as you well know, they have not read those books cover to cover. They do not understand them. You do, and I appreciate that. Thank you for prioritizing our children's education and for their intellectual freedom. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Barbara Hilton.
Good evening. I am here to voice my support for the inclusion of James in the district's curriculum for English 3 and AP English. We need our students to become critical thinkers, and one of the best ways that this happens is exposing them to content that offers different perspectives, allowing them to analyze and discuss with their peers and develop their own thoughtful ideas about complex subjects that are important to our country. James is exactly the kind of book that students should be reading in this district. It is smart, well-written, and offers a different perspective on slavery. It complements the already taught and approved books, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. I can only imagine how rich the discussion amongst students will be if they're given this opportunity. So please approve this book as part of the school's curriculum.
Our next speaker, Patricia Holloway.
Thank you. We read books as a way to see the world from another perspective and to learn about historical and current events that we will never experience directly ourselves. Novels like James develop empathy and understanding for other people's life situations that may be vastly different or unimaginable compared to our own. As a slave, Jim was forbidden from learning to read and write. The act of stealing a pencil stub brought great harm to Jim and those he cared for. I will never look at a pencil the same way again. At least you think that Jim's quest to gain even a rudimentary education is a thing of the past. We only have to look to Afghanistan today, where girls are prohibited from going to school and their schools are being bombed. When I was on the Capo School Board, I met with groups of high school students who were begging for books that were more contemporary and represented different points of view. My sincere hope that you approve this book.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jamie.
Thank you. I'm here to advocate the approval of James and to thank the teachers for submitting this powerful book. James offers our students the opportunity to explore an American classic from a fresh, important perspective. It challenges us to see Jim, not just as a victim of enslavement, but as a multidimensional, brilliant individual with his own intellect, dreams, and humanity. This portrayal of Jim, created by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Percival Everett, allows readers to engage with his complexity, showing that his character is far more than a victim of circumstance. When the IMRC approves materials, it's an endorsement of quality, backed by experts who know our students' needs. But I've learned that even when IMRC approves some books, there are some trustees who prioritize personal ideologies over educational needs, limiting students' access to materials that encourage critical thinking and broader perspectives. Some might argue that students can read James outside of class if it's not approved, but teachers play a crucial role in guiding them toward challenging, transformative texts. James is one such book. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Amy Baxter.
My name is Amy. I'm a former AP Language and Composition teacher in a neighboring district, and I'm also a CUSD parent. AP Lang and Comp is a rhetoric and argumentation class. Students who score a 5, the highest score awarded, on the exam are the students who successfully synthesize works from a variety of genre. The adoption of Percival Everett's novel James is important because it provides students one more source to analyze and synthesize into a multi-layered, complex argument. The opportunity to write essays on the exam which synthesizes fiction and nonfiction works from the mid-19th and 21st centuries is a powerful tool for CUSD students. To deny students the experience of studying a celebrated piece of 21st century American literature like James places students at a disadvantage on this exam. Limiting exposure to literature is limiting students' opportunities to compete in today's global society.
Our next speaker is Barbara.
Hello, my name is Barbara and I'm a parent of 2 kids in the district. I'm here today to ask you to approve the book James. I'm going to give you a different perspective. I'm a first-generation American. When I was applying to get into schools, there was no way I was getting in because of legacy or because my parents were going to make a big donation or because of sport. The only way I was going to get in was through my merit and academic record, and I needed to take AP classes to show that and get a high score. As many English teachers have told me, one just spoke right before me today, the book James is a fantastic tool for our CUSD students to have in their toolbox when taking the AP exam and to get those 5s. By not adopting James, you are causing harm and limiting opportunities to kids like me. The potential harm to students who are not mature enough to handle the book is mitigated by parents opting their children out. Please adopt this book, James. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Catherine Hall.
That's me, Catherine Hall. Much of what I was going to say has been already said. You know, the book is an award winner on many Book of the Year lists, and I just want to share a personal story. I grew up liking to read, perhaps loving to read. I read through school, and when I got into college, my major was in the sciences. I took, as an English course, comparative literature. I will argue with anyone that that's where I started to learn how to process information, how to analyze information, how to be a critical thinker. And I think that is what you want our students to be. This is for these AP classes. I would argue it's an appropriate book for most high schools, 11th grader, 12th graders. It's a wonderful book. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. But please approve this book and help our kids learn what they need to learn in this time to survive.
Our next speaker is Courtney. Courtney, please come forward.
Hi, I'm speaking to you today as a mom. I just finished reading James last week. I'm pretty conservative when it comes to what my kids can watch or what video games they can play. My son regularly tells me that I have North Korea settings on his phone. That said, I would be very comfortable with them reading this book. I have a 7th grader at Shorecliffs and a 9th grader at St. Clemente High School. Much to my dismay, neither of them are passionate readers, and I'm hoping that adopting modern literature like this to our curriculum might catch their interest. In addition, I value adding diverse voices and perspectives that increase empathy and compassion. I hope that my kids get the opportunity to read this powerful book in a future AP class alongside the already approved literature. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lisa.
Thank you for this time. You have such an important role in our community. As I usually say, if you want to take down our democracy, start with our education. My name is Lisa, and I'm a 28-year voting resident of CUSD, and I want to emphasize why James by Percival Everett is essential for our students. It offers a fresh perspective within Huckleberry Finn by giving Jim, the enslaved man, intelligence and a voice, encouraging students to think critically about literature and history. The novel engages with race, power, and identity, topics that remain deeply relevant today. It challenges students to analyze how stories are told and whose voices are heard. While it includes the N-word, like Huck Finn, its use is intentional, forcing readers to confront the realities of history rather than ignore them. This provides an opportunity for guided discussions and the power of language and historical truth. James prepares students for college-level thinking and real-world conversations. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sarah Phillips.
I'm Sarah Phillips. I'm a mom of a high school freshman, a 2nd grader in the district. I'm also a credentialed English language arts teacher and a teacher librarian. I currently work in a public high school as a teacher librarian in another school district, and it's my 23rd year in public education. I'm here tonight in favor of the adoption of James by Percival Everett for the AP book list. As I read the supporting materials, I see that Huck Finn has been taught alongside with the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. Coincidentally, I started reading James in February, library. I then reread Huck Finn to see where they lined up. And then I read Frederick Douglass's book. And I'm like, it's a trifecta. Reading all three of these together was a great experience in seeing how literature and history line up, to see how the lived experiences of an enslaved person line up with the novel of James. It was also a wonderful experience to read the satire of Twain alongside literary depth of James. I can only imagine the fantastic discussions that would ensue in an AP language classroom. James, that's it, okay.
Thank you, speakers.
Thank you. Okay, trustee discussion.
I would love to say something. First off, I love to see the English teachers here, and I love how passionate you are about this. I know my IMRC rep said that this book, I don't know if any of you four were there and presented, but they said it was an awesome presentation. So, well done. I just want to express my appreciation for the opportunity to have contemporary literature added to our curriculum. I was thrilled that this book was written by a Black author and has ties to Southern California. I thought that was a pretty cool side note. I love a book that offers perspectives, different perspectives. And I would imagine our awesome English teachers will, at a minimum, summarize Huck Finn and let them read some of that, if not all of it, would be remarkable, because obviously a perspective is only as good if you have both perspectives. So I'm just grateful for our teachers. I'm grateful that, and I totally trust them that they're capable of high-level discussions. I see a San Juan Hill sweatshirt. I've got a senior there right now and a freshman, so I hope that one day my daughter will be able to read this in her class and have these discussions. So thank you for bringing this to us.
Trustee Bolkus?
Well, I have a question in regards to first of all, I read the book, and I read a lot of reviews. And so my first question is, while some people felt it could be a standalone book, but I think having some knowledge of the original story, Huckleberry Finn, enhances the understanding of it. So if you could just, one of you share, how will that be? Are you going to be reading both books? Are you just going to summarize, kind of share with this? Or how do you see bringing James to the classroom?
Like one of our parents said, it's kind of a trifecta, right? With the narrative life of Frederick Douglass, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and now James. I do think, however, a lot of the time it's unrealistic to teach 3 books at once or 3 books on the same topic back to back to back. So I would probably, in adopting this book, teach the entire book and bring in what I felt were the most powerful excerpts from the original, especially those chapters on the King and the Duke, because that was something I was waiting for all of James. When are they coming? When are they coming? How's he going to do it? And it just blew me away. So that would definitely be one way that I would do it.
Well, then, of course, I know you're not doing Tom Sawyer as well.
No.
Is that approved in one of our grade levels? Probably. I just wondered if anybody knew. So I enjoyed the book. I really enjoyed the relationship between James and Huck, and the compassion there, and the story it was pretty incredible to read how James was teaching the young children to read and how to respond using the 2 languages. And it was really, I don't know, that just really struck out. There was a lot of parts. So the only question that I have, which has been brought up in reviews and brought up here, is the N-word. And so my question is, we had just last year in this boardroom, a parent, and I believe it was in the Aliso Viejo area, had a child in middle school. And it's been brought up in terms of our population. We have a very small population of Blacks. And this was the only Black student in the classroom. And I don't even remember what book it was, but it was about that word and the discomfort. So someone had said in terms of possibly the parent that is uncomfortable being able to opt out. It's just that there will be those that are uncomfortable. I get why it's inserted in all. In fact, I didn't even pay attention to how many times it was in the first chapter. It seemed to kind of accelerate through second and then through the third chapter and you know, the rape scene and all of that. But it was a terrific book, but I would like to know how you would handle that book in terms of reading it aloud. And quite honestly, just to finish, my appointee on the IMRC, when it came to, because it was explained to the IMRC, because that book was brought back to them, Carrie, you would remember, and I'm not sure what it was. And she said, she was a teacher in Texas, and she said, I'm not comfortable using that word and speaking it. So when it came to that, I probably would have found a video or a, you know, Nook book, you know, that's read, and she probably would have had it read. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. So I just wonder about how you feel about that, and if there's another lesson that someone can do if they're not comfortable with their child.
Okay, so big question, okay? I'm obviously not Black, talking about a word that has harmed Black people for literally hundreds of years. We had an incident at Elisa Niguel High School some years ago where a teacher was reading the N-word out loud while reading. And a student filmed that teacher and reported them. And understandably, students were uncomfortable with the word being read out loud, but also understandably, the teacher felt betrayed, right? Why did this student secretly film me instead of approaching me and talking to me about this when this had never been an issue in previous years? Since then, Aliso has done several trainings that I think have made teachers a little bit more comfortable and understanding, you know, in the current zeitgeist, what are the current generation's feelings about this word? And I think we are equipped to talk about it. Now, we do currently teach several books that use the N-word, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, To Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men, just to name a few. Something that I think is really important to note about these books is they're all written by white people. And that word is used only with the intention to harm in those books. I think James is unique because it's written by somebody who has had that word directed at him. And he also takes into account when people use these words, meaning no harm at all. And I think that that's something that our students are doing. Certainly at Elisa Niguel High School, kids throw the N-word around with their friends. I've heard it in hallways, in the classroom. And I would say 90% of the time, they're not intending to harm. And if you call them out on it, they go, oh, he's my friend, it's okay. But I want to point out a really good passage. It's really short, I promise, in James that I felt was necessary for these kids. So Huck says, it's page 69, it's in chapter 10. Why you holding them books, Huck asked. They feels good, I said. That's funny. How can a book feel good? He grabbed the Rousseau and thumbed through it. It ain't even got pictures. I likes the weight of them, I said. Huck stared at me for a long few seconds. I guess I don't understand, and he says the N-word. Somehow that word seems strange coming out of Huck's mouth. I think he heard it too, because we shared an awkward silence. And so I think that moment, when kids say, he's just my friend, you know, we're just goofing around, I think that's a really tangible and good moment of, you know, you're hurting somebody that you love with that kind of language. And this is something, and sorry to, you know, go in a tangent, but I just want to point out, you know, nobody's a saint and everybody makes mistakes. When I was in college, I was studying abroad in London, and my best friend in London was this guy named Ryan Kelly, and he was gay. And we were shopping together at Primark once, and he was telling me about, you know, something he was dealing with that was stupid and silly. And I said, that's gay. This is in like 2013, where people were still saying that all the time. And it was this same moment. Gay is not a slur. It's nothing near the N-word, right? But I said this, and I remember it 12 years later that he got very quiet, and we never talked about it, and I never apologized. But it changed the way I thought about language and using pejoratives from then on. And that's something I'd like for kids to learn before they're adults living abroad and hurting other adults that they love.
From a systems perspective, that's a great answer, by the way.
Thank you.
So I am definitely not coming in to try and talk.
I appreciate your response. I forgot what I was going to say.
Thank you.
I would love to add to that a little bit, Judy, because I was here at that board meeting when that parent got up. I wasn't on the board at the time, but it was Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. And it was a book that I actually read when I was teaching school to my class. And he was talking about middle schoolers, and I taught in elementary school. But I taught that because I taught up in the Bay Area where we had kids bust in from East Palo Alto into our schools that were Black. And I chose not to use the N-word because but I was able to teach them in an educational setting what that word meant, rather than them hearing it and repeating it from rap music or thinking it was okay in a different setting. So to me, I think it's really powerful to hear it in the classroom, whether you choose to say it or not. I'm never comfortable with it, and I'm fine if people are, and especially in that context. But I think that I wanted them to know what it meant to me as a white woman who had studied the African American culture and had deep respect for it and the history, and was sad about what, it hurt what had happened to them. I wanted them to get that from me and to know that that was not okay. So I think it's powerful to be able to teach in this setting.
Thank you.
So I would just add that from a systems position, obviously families can always opt out of any piece of literature. There's always, our teachers are trained and told you have to have an alternative assignment if a family opts out of a book. That's totally fine. And we're doing a couple of things. So one is we're also continuing to train our teachers so that they feel comfortable tackling these issues. We have a training coming up in a few weeks with the Orange County Department of Ed, just to give our teachers more skill. They're already skilled, but more skill in how you might take on these controversial issues, not just the N-word, but also the rape scene and the murder, those types of things as well. And the other thing we can always do, we're going to ask for, is when topics like this are coming up, in the syllabus or in an information sheet before, the parents are just made aware. This is the book we're reading. Here's some topics that are in it. And so, before your kid gets to read it, take a read. And then if you want to opt your kid out, that's totally fine. So I think the best thing we can do is inform our families. We're going to read James. James uses this word. James has these themes. It's a companion to Huckleberry Finn, or a retelling in a new way, and get them involved.
And add to pay, as on that list, right? Please read an excerpt from this section of the book so that it provides that context.
Hi, Ms. Torres.
Hi.
I'm so proud. I don't know what to say. I've been sitting in this chair for 5 years, and that was phenomenal.
Thank you.
I mean, can I take your class? I don't know what else to say. Like, the education our kids are getting through that powerful text it's beyond words. And I'm rarely at a loss for words. But my one comment is, and I think a speaker alluded to it, it's contemporary books.
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
Listen to that. As a mom with kids in the high school, kids are not reading. They're not engaging with novels anymore. They're completely disconnecting. And the national statistics out there with kids who are actually picking up a book is horrifying. And the way that you just taught all of us, and if you're teaching that in your classroom, I can't imagine anybody not wanting to pick up that book and read that book. So thank you. Thank you for bringing the book into the district and making the recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Adams?
Yeah, I would just agree with all the comments so far that I love the idea of different perspective and having our older students navigate these tough topics with the guidance of our amazing teachers. So I love that. I love the contemporary aspect. I would love to see it paired with Huck Finn, you know, as much as possible. I understand you can't read so many, but I love that. And I think it's great to involve the parents because that gives it, you know, for me, I would love to have the conversation with my child, you know, alongside of what they're doing in the classroom. So thank you, staff, and thank you, teachers.
Thank you.
Trustee Jones?
So, so I'd like to be very specific about what we tell parents because, well, I was talking to a parent recently who was saying, you know, if they didn't approve of a book, or if they didn't know what was going to be in a book that their child was assigned, they would read that book. Well, that's all very well and good. Some of our parents don't read English. Some of our parents don't have time. Some of our parents are not literate. So I think we have a responsibility to be very specific on books where there are some possible issues. And a parent tonight came and spoke about how her child had been called the N-word. This is a thing, and it bothers me that students say this to each other. If I said it to a student, I might not get out alive, but it's not okay. I think parents need to know that in both Huck Finn and James, the N-word is used more than 200 times. I didn't count, someone else did. But I think that should be called out. I think it should be called out that there is a rape scene. It is very brief. It is not described in any sort of graphic way. But then there's also the possibility of rape that comes up because we do have students who have experienced it or have a close friend who's experienced it, and this can be a trigger for them. Parents need to know this so they can make that decision about asking for opting out. And we allow it, but we don't necessarily inform the parent, and I would like that very specifically to be made. The other situation that I'm concerned about is, as you've mentioned, pairing it with Huck Finn. I know that there's no time to read both books all the way through, but I think some exposure to both is really important. This came up in some of the emails I received. I heard it tonight. One of the IMRC members mentioned, one of her issue was that we should be reading the classics, and Huck Finn is the classic, not James. And I understand that point. So I think that maybe the one gets assigned a summer reading, as you say, maybe just excerpt it. But I would like to require that they be taught together in some way, that at least some portion of Huck Finn is taught with James. I can't just say, oh, well, I hope you do.
Yeah.
I want to require it. But I also want to say one other thing. A bunch of people came here tonight, and they have emailed, and they have been posting on Facebook, and they have been saying to me all about these terrible conservative trustees, and our board has been flipped. Did you hear that tonight? Did you hear anything that you had feared? I didn't. I've been working with these people. I think they're good trustees. And I'd rather not keep hearing that from the audience. These are thoughtful, intelligent people who care about kids, and they have shown that in their discussions tonight. And I'm ready to hear it stop. Thank you.
Ms. Torres, can I just ask one more question?
Sure.
So they talked a lot about this being offered in an AP class, but will it also be offered in a regular English course as well, like English?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Mr. Weinstein's here. And
Oh,
he would.
I know.
He teaches English 3. And
How are you doing?
Yeah.
So it'd be offered in English 3 and then juniors and seniors in AP. And Trustee Bilkus?
One more quick thing, because I remembered what I wanted to say. What I especially loved about the book, and while we're talking about the N-word, is why they were referred to that, and James with dignity. with being about family. His character, I mean, he ended up having to do some bad things, but I mean, what went through him every time he thought about Katie, him being hidden in the room when she was being raped, and it came back to him and came back to him. It just showed him not as just some dumb nigger, but a very smart, compassionate, real person. And that's the best part to me that came out in the book, is the character building and the relationships, and even knowing how to handle and analyze Duke and the king. And he was pretty smart to kind of know what was coming, and again, I emphasize that relationship with Huck. So thank you. I will be voting for the book.
Thank you.
So I really would like to see this to be a companion. I have a few concerns. One, the rape scene. Two, if students read James as an assigned text, it's very likely that teachers wouldn't be assigning Huckleberry Finn as an assigned text. And I think that that would be a great loss. And Ernest Hemingway, who said all modern American literature comes from one book by Mark Twain called Huckleberry Finn, right? So Twain used Huck's distinctive narration to give outsiders a voice while establishing a tradition of social commentary, particularly regarding institutionalized racism. Another objection is that the academic rigor one expects in an AP class, as our student that came and spoke on tonight, if you're unable to compare the two novels, the value of reading James lies in a comparison, because it's based on and it comes from that direction. Everett wanted to elevate James's intelligence via Voltaire and John and the Enlightenment, but few novels have ever equaled the moral climax when Huck refuses to turn in Jim as a runaway slave and declares, all right then, I'll go to HELL. I think James would be assigned to summer reading. That's how I would think that it would be the best way to be assigned to summer reading prior to coming into junior year, which allows for a close reading of Huckleberry Finn, and then it can complete the analysis and then the classroom discussion during the school year. One speaker said race, identity, freedom, critically important elements of both of those texts. The extension of Mark Twain's character Jim may skew the narrative of the classic Huckleberry Finn. And a couple of the things, I'm sure we all had a lot of emails regarding the book, and a few parents in their emails that were very much in support of James stated that it would be a perfect companion to Huckleberry Finn, which I completely agree with. I completely agree with that. And I like Trustee Jones' reminder that I like the companionship of it. And as far as as we are deciding to vote on this right now, I would like as a board to be able to review what will be sent out from teachers to parents about the novel and what we would do with that. Because I think this is a big.
Well, right now, we're only just voting on the approval of this book.
That's correct, but I'm sharing.
I want to make understanding what we're voting on here.
Absolutely, I'm just sharing some specifics about it. Because if we vote on it, we'll never come back to us. So.
Do you mind if I comment real quick?
Sure.
For one thing, I would challenge you to find a single teacher at Aliso who is teaching Huck Finn. There are 0. Teaching James would bring it back. So if you care about Huck Finn being taught, you care about James being taught. The second thing, the rape scene. We already have novels with rape scenes, and they're pretty foul. I'll give you one example, The Kite Runner. There is a homosexual rape scene that has really no purpose in the narrative other than to shock and to give. Let me finish my sentence, please. no purpose other than to give Amir a reason to feel guilty about what happened to his friend and seek some kind of salvation from it. It is a tool to make the character feel a particular way. With James, the impotence of James in that rape scene is, I think, a crucial look at the intersectionality of maleness and blackness, femaleness and blackness, and ultimately is not looking at rape as something to shock or disgust. As you mentioned, it has no, gory details or anything like that. And as someone who can't even watch a movie that has a rape scene, this one I found, digestible, perhaps is the best word. And I think it's more about power, okay? And certainly it was an issue of power in Kite Runner, but more so it's a character motivation. And we could argue all day about whether or not, Kite Runner's a masterpiece, but at the end of the day, we're talking about James.
Yes. So with the parent emails talking about it being a perfect companion to Huckleberry Finn, I agree. I love that we're adding the modern element to it. I love that it's from an African-American author. I love that it is drawing a lot of interest and specifics, and it is coming from the Huckleberry Finn. So I personally would like it to be a companion and to be taught together.
President Davis, is it all right?
Other comments? Yes, please.
So just from a student perspective, the English curriculum in CUSD that I've gone through since kindergarten has been phenomenal. I had Ms. Torres as a teacher last year in AP Ling. I had Mrs. Anderson as my 8th grade English teacher, and we read Frederick Douglass last year in class. I've read Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn as well, and I think that this seems like a very interesting book to read alongside those novels. And I just want to thank you all for coming tonight and for sharing your perspective on this book. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Other comments, questions, thoughts? Okay. And with that, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. With a preferential vote, as soon as I did.
Thank you.
D, the certification with the second interim. May I have a motion to approve the instructional materials recommend, just kidding. Oh, to approve the second interim.
So moved.
For Campton, if we could recognize you to please present the item.
Moved and seconded.
Moved by trustee Zollinger and seconded by trustee Adams.
Thank you, President Davis, trustees. We're going to try to make this as exciting as possible for everybody. And so the second interim, the item before you tonight is one step in our budget journey throughout the year. And I say journey because we begin in June of each year with our adopted budget. And then over time, we can make adjustments and we bring these to the board for your review. And then the interim reports are to give an update on where we are for the current year and a multi-year projection. So going back to last year, we started the adopted budget with identifying the need for making reductions. And then we brought those to the first interim and showed a much healthier budget and outlook. Now with the second interim, we can say that we're even in a stronger position financially, but it really is because of the hard work of the leadership team in all the different divisions, fine-tuning their budgets and looking for areas to optimize efficiencies and all of that. So it's really gone a long way to helping the school district be in a really strong financial position. So with that, I'll turn it over to Philippa Townsend, Assistant Superintendent for Fiscal Services, to present the item, and we'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
We don't have the presentation. Do you want to do that?
Okay, thank you. When building the second interim budget, the assumptions used include those in the School Services of California financial projection dartboard for the current and future years, and which is included with this agenda item. The assumptions in the dartboard were revised as of the governor's January budget proposal and use data available from state and federal agencies such as the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is used for the cost of living adjustment. A few items in the governor's January budget proposal were not included in the second interim budget, and you can see that on the chart. This was following guidance from School Services of California and the Orange County Department of Education. So the first of those items is a discretionary block grant that was proposed that would bring $12 million to Capistrano. And the reason we didn't include that one is because that one's still going to be used in discussions in the legislature. So we're going to wait and see what happens. The second item is the transitional kindergarten add-on grant to fund the reduction in class size in transitional kindergarten, TK, from 12 students to 1 adult to 10 students to 1 adult. There were concerns raised in the legislature that the money was too much to cover the cost involved in reducing the class size. So we'll wait and see how much that is before we include it in our budget. And the third item is the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. And all of these are subject to negotiation. We'll find out more in May or June. Next slide. So the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. We've had this grant before. Back in 22-23, we were first given this grant. A year later, the governor took it back, or some of it back from us, about 14%. And with the intent that we would get it back in 25-26. And so this is proposed to come back to us in over 3 years. So that would be about $1.2 million a year for 3 years, assuming we get it. So the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant did not have restrictions when we first got it, but when we get it back, it will have some restrictions. And those restrictions include doing a needs analysis of students and learning loss and making sure we address the needs that students may have, whatever they are. And those needs are related to chronic absenteeism, English language arts, and maths. And we have to include evidence-based actions to address those. And that plan would be included in our local Control Accountability Plan, our LCAP. Next slide. Oh, wait. So these are the items that I've discussed not being included in our budget. The last two items, TK-12 literacy and maths coaches, requires a high unduplicated count. We do not have a high unduplicated count. The last one is the same, ELOP, 55% threshold. We do have ELOP, but we don't have this level of funding. We have a lower level of funding. So budgets are adjusted every time we bring the budget back to you. We update anything that changes, such as number of staff, If we're doing reductions in staff, we take those out of the budget. If the enrollment projections change as they do every December, we update those. Our attendance changes once we have a better idea of where our attendance will come in. And that was adjusted for the second interim. And any new information that affects the budget or the future years. So if the COLAs for next year or the out years change, we update that. If the consumer price index changes, we update that. So every time you see the budget, there will be changes to it. So this chart just compares the assumptions we used when we presented the first interim with the assumptions we used with the second interim. And the reason we include this is not just to let you all know and the public what assumptions we're using, but also because OCDE, when they analyze our budget to check that we're on track, they like to see what assumptions we're using. So it's possible that we could choose to do a different assumption. Let's say the COLA was 3% and we wanted to be more conservative and use 2.5%. We could do that. We just have to let everybody know what assumption we're using. Next slide. So this slide, I believe you've seen this before. It just shows the last 2 years of enrollment, the current year's enrollment, and the next 3 projected years. Next slide. This chart compares our ending fund balance at the first interim compared to now at the second interim. And as you can see, our fund balances are higher, and that's because of budget reductions we've made since first interim, along with a change in our attendance percentage from 94 to 94.5%, and just some different assumptions with the out-year COLAs and attendance. Next slide. Next update will be in May with the May revise, which will contain the final COLA for the 25-26 fiscal year. In May, we will bring the proposed budget for 25-26 for the initial viewing of it, and then in June, we will bring it back for budget adoption. And then in September, August or September, we will present the unaudited actuals for the 24-25 fiscal year. And with that, we recommend a positive certification of our second interim budget.
Ms. Hayes, do we have any speaker cards on this item? We have none. Okay, trustees?
I have a question. I know we're not 55%, but what percentage are we in terms of unduplicated?
33%.
What is it?
33%.
33? Okay, thank you.
So I think it was the first or second slide, you talked about a discretionary grant. Is that the SSPD grant that you're referring to there? One more. Yes, discretionary one-time grant of approximately $12 million is not budgeted until later in the year. Is that one, the Student Support and Professional Development Grant?
I'm not sure what its formal title is.
Okay. Okay, that's probably not so important. But on the same slide, the whole TK thing seems to go back and forth. It's like, every time you turn around, it's on, it's off. So what, as of today at 5 o'clock, was it on or was it off?
As of today, it's on.
Okay, so that's the increase to 6,400 per ADA?
So that was the governor's
Yes.
proposal, and that's still on. That was the governor's proposal, it's still on.
Okay.
But the legislative analyst office is who makes recommendations to the legislature is saying what Philippa said earlier, is they're recommending it be less.
Yeah.
They don't
That
know
it
what,
would
they
be
don't, so
less,
that's
but not zero.
not zero, right?
Yeah.
Just that they say that the number proposed by the governor is more than what's necessary to actually lower the class size.
Yeah, I believe their number they're suggesting is about half.
Yeah.
Right, okay, all right. And so, yeah, and I think that was the latest I had heard. It just keeps changing, and I wanted to know what the current status was. So, okay, all right, that's all I need to
And
know.
that's why we're not using it in our projections, because we don't know what it's going to be. So it'd be unwise to use it in our projections right now.
But are we even using the 3,100 in our projections?
No.
No.
We're not using any of it in our projections right now.
Okay.
If it comes in, that'll be great, and then we can adjust our projections and everything else.
Okay, great, thank you.
And we're going to continue with our attendance initiatives. So even though we upped them 0.5%, we're hoping to get back to that historical 96%. So
Other trustees? Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries 700 with the preferential vote of aye from Student Board Member Brando. Thank you. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the 2025 ballot for California School Boards Association Delegate Assembly Region 15? Moved by trustee Zollinger, seconded by trustee Adnams. I'd like to recognize trustee Jones and Bullicus, who will present the item.
I can. Well, you have before you a list of names and their applications, and the fact that we had, I think there was 3 or 4 who somehow missed the deadline but then submitted theirs. I've been on the CSBA since 2019, and as a delegate, and so I've worked with many of these people through the years. So part of my evaluation was reading their application, but also knowing them as a part of the discussion through the years, because we do meet twice a year for our conventions, so to speak, and we spend several days discussing these things. So you see the list. There is 7 openings. In discussion with trustee Jones, in our evaluation, we're recommending 6 to go forward. We are opting not to select a 7th, just to fill a 7th. And so Beverly Berryman from Fullerton, Bonnie Castry from Huntington Beach. And I will just say Bonnie has, oh my gosh, she's been on CSBA, she's been on her board for many years. She has been president of CSBA. She is a wealth of knowledge, and she's highly respected. So always love to hear her input. Jessica Guerrero, and she was one from Anaheim Union who did submit and is on target in terms of advocating the things that we are advocating. Susie Schwartz, right next door to Saddleback, been working with her for years. And let's see, Carrie Flanders and Francis Nguyen. I don't know Francis Nguyen so much, but in reading, you can look at what you think. But those were the 6 candidates that we were recommending to put forward. And if you have any questions about one of them that you may know or something, feel free to ask. So if you're in agreement, we would call the vote on these 6 names that CUSD would put forward, and then there will be the tabulation throughout our District 15 for who will actually then be joining us. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? So that's 601.
First reading of Board Policy 5111, admission. We have a motion to approve Board Policy 5111, admission on the first reading and waive the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee Jones, seconded by trustee Zollinger. I'd like to recognize Greg Merwin to present the item.
Thank you, President Davis and trustees. Staff presents item 13F, first reading board policy 5111, admission. The revisions reflect changes in the universal TK admission and enrollment eligibility. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes, do we have any speaker cards on this item? There are none. Trustees, comments, discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, the motion carries 7-0 with a preferential vote of aye from Student Board Member Brando. Move on to first reading Board Policy 5122. May I have a motion to approve Board Policy 5122, promotion, acceleration, retention on the first reading and waive second reading?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Bullockis, seconded by Trustee Adnams. I'd like to recognize Greg Merwin to present the item.
Thank you again. Staff presents item 13G, first reading board policy 5122, promotion, acceleration, retention. The revisions reflect procedures for kindergarten acceleration requests as well as defining criteria for consideration in response to universal TK. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Just, I mean, why wouldn't it be?
I mean, all three of these policies are about the changes to UTK, so we're just making sure we match the changes to EdCo.
That's right. Comments, questions? Trustee Castellanos, comments, questions? This is your world, I know. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 7-0 with a preferential vote of aye from Student Board Member Brando. And first reading, Board Policy 6170.1. May I have a motion to approve Board Policy 6170.1, transitional kindergarten on the first reading and waive second reading? Moved by Trustee Zollinger, seconded by Trustee Adams. And I'd like to recognize Greg Merwin to present the item.
And thank you again. Staff presents item 13H, first reading board policy 6170.1, transition kindergarten. Revisions include updated eligibility dates, instructional minutes, and staff implications, again in response to universal TK. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Do we have any speaker cards on this item? There are none. Trustees, comments, questions?
I just had a comment where, in the policy where it says, board encourages ongoing collaboration between district, preschool, and TK staff. I think that's hard for parents, right? I mean, I don't know how we do that here when we have a student enrolling, and then how do we decide what pathway is appropriate? Do we make recommendations to the parent, or is the parent just, it's parent choice on TK, pre-K? Because really, ultimately, the programs are somewhat overlapping now because of age. And so there is actually better pathways for certain students. And so what I've noticed in my career is that maybe we could have better conversations with parents as to what pathway might be a better fit for their student.
I know those conversations happen, and we can definitely, as board policy is revised and approved, really highlight that part and work with our early childhood program and make sure families are fully informed of the two options.
Thank you. I think it's really confusing because now that the programs overlap with age, parents don't really understand the difference between the programs and what might be best for their child. Thanks, Greg.
Is there an assessment that the TKers take, like the kindergartners would take, just to give the teachers an idea of where they stand? And if they see it's low, they can...
Other comments, questions?
I think some of that is also covered in the previous policy, promotions, retentions, accelerations, in terms of that conversations you would have with school staff in making the decision for your child.
No further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, the motion carries 7-0 with preferential vote of aye from Student Board Member Brando. We'll move on to consent calendar. Mrs. Hayes, do you have any speaker cards on this item? Thank you. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the consent calendars? Trustees, is there anyone that wants to pull any items? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the consent calendar items 15A through 17C? Moved by trustee Zollinger, and seconded by trustee Jones. Any further comments before we call the roll? Ms. Hayes, can you please call the roll?
Student Board Member Verando.
Aye.
Trustee Castellanos.
Aye.
Trustee Pritchard. Trustee Zollinger.
Aye.
Trustee Adnams.
Aye.
Trustee Jones.
Aye.
Trustee Bullockis.
Aye.
Trustee Davis.
Aye. Okay, it is, motion carries 7-0 by a roll call vote to approve the consent calendar. The Student Board Member Brando casting a preferential vote of aye. There being no further business before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by trustee Zollinger, seconded by trustee Jones. There being no further business before the board, we will call with all those in favor.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 7-0 to adjourn the meeting with a preferential vote of aye from Student Board Member Rando. The time is now 9:33. Have a great night. Thank you.